Okay, this video is going to be about rows. It's going to be kind of general. I'm going to throw a lot of different variations of rows in this video, and just a few thoughts on it. And first of all, the rows are probably the first kind of back exercise you're going to do for a while until you can do pull-ups if you can't do pull-ups. So get used to rowing, and a row is really a pool. It can be a band, it can be a weight, it can be a cable, many different pieces of equipment on a row, and that's usually specified in the exercise name. And furthermore, those rows can be done from a low anchor point, a medium anchor point, or a high anchor point, and they all come with different effects in the shoulder and back, and they all have a few different outcomes. So one of the first things that you got to be aware of when you're doing a row is making sure that you're using your back muscle and you're feeling your shoulder tighten as you move that elbow past your torso. And another thing is make sure that you don't use any kind of momentum, to kind of get that weight up there. You want to stop from doing that because, first of all, you're not relying on your back to do the job. And even though it might be athletic and you might be able to actually get from point A to point B, you got a chance to build strength in the gym. You ought to use it and get as much out of that back as you can. So you're going to get more close to fatigue. It's going to be a little bit more exertion if you whittle that momentum away. If you're moving up and you're just on that weight selection for the first time, that's without saying. You're going to have some of that. But you can also kind of get habituated to doing that because it is less exertion. Sorry. Okay, so one of the most foolproof methods of the row that I feel like people can do is the cable row or banded row from a high anchor point. And that's because standing upright, you're more used to that. Okay, and then the high anchor point sets the humerus, the bone here, into that shoulder socket the right way. You don't have to worry about that shoulder creeping up as much. So let me grab a handle. And this is the cable row. Make sure you always keep a little distance, or a lot of distance between the ear and shoulder. And I generally try to prevent any kind of rotation in my trunk. It depends, I'll show you that in a second. But the most basic standing cable row, we got a picture here, is you can even use a little bit of that band's tension and your own body weight to kind of start yourself off kind of like this. And see where my shoulder is? It's kind of opposite that high anchor point. And you breathe out and then breathe in. Some people would wonder, when do you stop your row? Theoretically, you could keep on rolling over. I jest, but I understand what they're saying. Instead of, like a bench press where the elbows are locked out and you're definitely reached your end point, on a row, I use my criteria as being shoulder blade as close to that spine. That reinforces what's actually doing the work, and it moves most of that work to the muscle and not any of the joint. So that's your standing high cable row. And if you're pretty cautious about your rows and you're just starting to implement them, you might start there. That really will assuage a lot of fears. A second row that I think is one of the first ones that you'll learn or want to learn is the shortstop row, what I've been calling the shortstop row. And I'll kind of talk about the different benefits and drawbacks of using the kettlebell and the dumbbell. And your shortstop row is so named because you're taking this infielder's position like this. And you take one hand off the knee, grab that weight, and fully support your torso on this outstretched arm here. Reinforce that by going bone on bone here. You shouldn't have any exertion through the arm. The shoulder can be pressed down toward the hip. This is the non-working side. As an arm as a whole, I should want to try to push downward and get some tension between my hip and my armpit. And see, now that I've packed my shoulder, I've got T-Rex arms. This isn't as far out as I can reach my arms, but it allows me to push my hips back and bring the tendon strength of my hamstrings into play. And then, I can use that tendon in my hamstring to support the rest of me, my lap. It's kind of got some reinforcing tension here. And then from here I row, and it just depends on what piece of equipment I'm using. Here's a dumbbell, and one thing the dumbbell does that I like is it forces you to rotate as you come up. Think of it as accommodating that weight past the leg as you do your exercise. So if you really want to incorporate that, and I feel like a little bit of rotation as you pull or push always helps you do a little bit more weight, then this is a good one to do it. Just make sure you got a flat back. And you breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in. Show you on the other side. Now, that end position is what is your money maker. And a lot of times there's a lot of coordination involved in your breathing, in your rowing, and even if you're not exercising, if you're playing sports, you sync your breathing up a lot of times with what you're doing. So as you move that weight towards you, you will have a competing kind of momentum inside your trunk, pushing downward against that weight as it comes up. And you got to find balance there. And that's what we're doing as we row. I've just gotten so used to doing a hook grip that my thumb is on the same size as my fingers. And that's just to keep a straight wrist. I got my knuckles pointed down, the flat part of my fingers there. I've got them pointed directly down. So I've got a straight, neutral wrist here. I'm not right here. I can be here, but I'm going to get out of there. You want to go here, and that keeps the shoulder down, pushing downward with this arm, right? And breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in. Now that end part I was talking about, that's your moneymaker. That's what we're going for. I prioritize that so much that I like to kind of expel the rest of my air at that end point. That is your shortstop row, as I've been calling it. Now, there's a 3-point row, and I think that's beneficial for just taller people in general. If you're of the taller, leaner variety, you can do this if you're, short, medium size too. Put that hand and support yourself on something that gives you even more distance away from your feet to allow you, to kind of get comfortable through the shoulders. That's one thing. What you don't want to do on a row, no matter what variation or no matter what angle you don't want that shoulder creeping up right there. That does nothing to help us out. So push down against that. And sometimes just the act of doing that and lessening the tension up here makes you feel good because you're so used to it. So push down with the shoulders and then your row, then do your row. And don't worry about getting a ton of range of motion out of this. It's going to be really, really close to your breathing pattern on a lot of this when you get started. Okay, next up is your barbell row. And this is one that I like to give. First of all, your row in general, we're targeting the lats here, the latissimus dorsi. And they are a large group, they're a large muscle group. And so you're taking a large part of your body into consideration when you do a row, and you're satisfying that component. You always want a balanced program. You always should err on the side of a little bit tighter here because, you know, just the nature of how we're made. We can see in front of ourselves. So err on the side of doing your rows maybe a little bit more than you would do any kind of press. That's first and foremost. And like I said, if you can't do pull-ups, your row is going to be something that you're going to be doing a lot of every day. Or every time you pick up weights and you're doing an all-body program. Different if you're doing splits. But you're going to be doing a row, and this exercise here, I can tell you, really put a lot of muscle on my back, especially in junior high. That really helped me out as far as one of the first things I saw really get defined and strong was my lats. And it just kind of goes to show that if you take care of a large group, a large muscle group, you know, you're satisfying maybe a quarter of yourself. So make sure you always get those rows in there at least, you know, or some pull-ups, something back. Okay, here's a barbell row. Same thing applies. We're going to row this weight toward us. There's a few different variations. It's all related to grip. Most generally, that overhand grip is what we're going for. Sometimes we'll see the underhanded grip. That kind of keeps some of the shoulder out of it, and we'll bicep a little bit that way. But you should always pull thinking of elbow, and again, those shoulder blades coming together. And you want to balance the hand width relative to your barbell. So your barbell usually has markings on it, and it's knurled or diamond kind of patterns for your grip. And I use those as reference points. I want the inside of my hand to be the same on both sides. So I kind of go, you know, if I'm standing normally, I kind of go just outside my thighs with the inside of my hand, maybe an inch. So I'm kind of right there, and then I'm going to back up, and then I find the hip hinge because you can see where you can get in trouble here. You know, if you're going to go down into this kind of functional hip hinge position, and you interpret that as rounding the back, then you're going to be in for a rude awakening one day on this exercise, or just in general in life. What you want to do is get yourself set up right on that. And this is a perfect way to kind of go about it. Slide the front of the barbell against the front of your legs at all times when you get into this position. That means by virtue of doing that, I have to push my hips back. I keep my chest forward, but now I've balanced myself over my perpendicular calves in relation to the ground. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. And breathe out. Breathe in. Okay, that's your barbell row. The row is a very basic fundamental exercise. Anybody can do it, or they should. If they're not doing it, I don't know how they're opening doors. So it's very practical. Excuse me. Make sure you're not letting the shoulder creep up. Make sure you're not starting the lawnmower, giving yourself excess momentum And a little bit at the beginning of a new weight selection going up is okay, but you want to look to whittle that away. And then number 3, make sure that you're breathing. It's real focused on this one. There's a I feel like a very direct relationship with the shoulders and anxiety and shortness of breath and kind of negative feedback loop going on right there. So let's say nothing was bothering you that day, and I told you to elevate your shoulders. You might be so associated that with stress that stressful things might have came about because you did that. So you want to make sure while we have the opportunity to really hone that in, at least at the beginning, remember, a relaxed body can always do more. Now, when we're thinking relaxed body, we're thinking this, thinking face, thinking, hey, we're doing work, but we're breathing. So that's just a very general opening to rows. I would urge anyone doing these to start off with a high anchor point banded or cable row with no rotation. So you're here. The barbell row isn't going to bother you if you're very, very diligent about not rubbing the back. The angle of my torso, I can go here. I can do this all day. I'm feeling it in my hamstrings. And over time, the back extensors are going to get a little fatigued, but they're postural muscles. They should be able to work for a long time. This right here is fine. It's this or this that we don't want. We don't want a U right there. We want, we want that natural S curve. But shoot, you're dealing with some people that are doing this. You might tell them to actively arch, and that gets them to a neutral spine. So be aware of that. You might be doing everything you can to get in that position, but unless you've got a mirror or somebody telling you, hey, that looks good, then I'd keep with the banded row or maybe do floor cobras. You just don't want to do this. You're already doing that. If you're pretty sure you've been told that or anything. So that's the row. Incorporate it, use it.